Hi, I'm Beth. Welcome to today's yoga class. This yoga class is for headaches and migraines. So I wanted to do this class because I get migraines myself, and in fact, that's what first brought me to yoga years ago. I'd heard that yoga could be helpful for migraines. I thought I would give it a try. And as it turns out, although it didn't change the frequency or duration of my migraines, yoga is soothing to me while I have a migraine, particularly certain poses. So I wanted to bring some of those to you today. One caveat: everyone is different, particularly migraine sufferers, very different of how they experience their migraines. So some of the things I show you may not feel good at all to you when you're having a migraine. I plan to give you different options. We'll be using some props to set up the poses so you can experiment and find out what works for you. If anything, I do hope that some of these poses will help bring you some relief. So we are going to start with a supported fish pose. Now I recommend having a blanket, maybe a small pillow, a couple of blocks. I'm going to show this pose to start with one block and the blanket, and then I'll show you a variation with the two blocks. So I'll take my blocks. And you can also, if you have a small pillow or a smaller blanket or towel, you can use that too. Have the blanket, and you want to fold it or roll it. Either way is fine. So it's maybe a few inches thick. That'll be the first thing that you'll have to experiment a little bit with yourself. And then you'll place it on your mat. That's going to go underneath your back, just under the area where your rib cage are on your back. So around the area of your shoulder blades, behind your ribs. So I'm going to lie down and adjust this blanket so that it's behind my ribs. And then I'm going to take the block on the low position and use it as a little pillow right at the base of my occipital bones, those little bony protrusions at the bottom of the skull. Now you might wonder, why are you using a block rather than the pillow? For me, when I have migraines, that's where it hurts, these little points at the bottom of the skull. And having a little pressure on those points is very helpful. It helps relieve the pain. Now remember, that absolutely may be different for you. So let's try it this way for a few moments. Now I have my knees bent. You can keep your knees bent. You can stretch your legs out long. You can have your legs in any arrangement that you like. You can soften your knees in toward each other. And then same with your arms. If you have your arms out as a T, you want them to be above the blanket so that the blanket's not interfering. Your chest can come out wide. You can take any option for your arms. They can rest gently on your belly. It can be helpful for allowing yourself to take your awareness to your breath. Certainly having a calm, comfortable breath can be helpful for any type of pain issues. Now you see I'm keeping my glasses on as we practice. I'd certainly recommend that you take your glasses off. If you're a glasses wearer, set them aside. You could even use a washcloth or if you have an eye bag, over your eyes in this pose. Again, some people like that pressure on their face when they have a headache or migraine, some do not. Allow your breath to be as soft and gentle as possible. So you don't need to add to the stress of already having a headache and doing too much concern about your breath. Now, if this version of the pose is working for you, you can stay right here. And for most of these poses, you can stay as long as you'd like. You don't have to go through the whole practice. You can choose one posture that we do and stay in that pose the whole time. You'll see that this practice is sort of like a little bit of yin yoga, which we get into a pose. This is more yin because we're allowing some stretch, especially to the version we do next time. And sometimes it's a little bit more restorative, where we're getting into a pose where we're just letting the props support us and we're really not stretching. So I'm going to show you the little bit more stretch version of this pose. If you like this, but feel like more stretch, especially to your back, would be helpful if you have backaches or any other pains with your migraines. We're going to show you the second version of this pose. Again, if you're good already, just stay right here. I'm going to roll to the side so I can come up. Remove the blanket, and instead of the blanket, I'm going to use my second block. The block is basically going to go where the blanket is. I'm going to keep it in the flat position. Now, it can be up higher. I think for headaches and migraines, it's really nice to have it pretty low. This is just going to give us a little firmer support than the blanket did. Again, rolling back to the same spot, you might have to adjust it. Finding that spot for your head. Now that your back is higher, you might find that you need the head a little higher bit with your block. So this is actually one of my absolute favorite poses, not just for migraines, but really for any time I'm feeling stressed, any other pain I have going on in my upper back. This supported fish pose allows a lot of stretch in the front body. This can really help us to draw a lot of breath, making it have us easier access to the breath. And at the same time, it's providing a gentle back bend. So maybe a little bit of release of those overworked back muscles. And then, as I said, for me, having this block underneath my head right at the base of my skull, when I have a migraine, that really provides a great deal of relief for me. So I'm going to take about 3 more breaths here. Remember that you can stay as long as you like, or if you're ready to try the next posture with me, gently use your arms to support you as you roll to one side. No rush to come out of this. You can allow your body to transition fairly slowly. And then we're going to come around for a supported child's pose, or really a child's pose with a little bit of head support. So I'm going to have all my props nearby because you never know what might be most useful to you for this. I'll have my little pillow, I'll have my blanket. I think I'll show it with, we'll go from more stretch or more extreme to more gentle this time. So this time I will take off my glasses because I'm going to have the block. I'm going to put it on its edge because I want to put the block right between my eyebrows. That little spot again is another pressure point that could feel really beneficial and useful. It may not to you. You can give it a try. So I'll put my glasses aside for a moment. Take your knees as wide or as close as you like. Come down to your arms, your elbows, or you can have something under your arms. And then allow your forehead, that little spot between the eyebrows, to come right onto the block. Perhaps a little bit of a gentle support on your forearms like I'm doing. And in fact, that can make you have less pressure on the block depending on how much weight you put into your arms. If you want more pressure on the block, you can reach your arms away, let them come behind you. So right away, that just might feel like too much. Do not stick with the block if that feels like too much. Take your blanket, and you can let your blanket come to sort of a narrower cylinder, similar to what we had with the block. Put the blanket on the mat, come back down. It might not be right at that pinpoint between your eyebrows. That's totally okay. And see how that feels. Now that softness might feel better, but you might find that you need to make a little more of a stack. Remember that the arms don't have to stay here. The arms can be part of your stack as well. If you don't have any props or don't want to use them, you can put your arms in little fists. That's a really nice way to provide that pressure somewhere between firm and gentle. And then you can also do it with a pillow, with the blanket, without the blanket, depending on how high you want that prop. Today, what felt good for me was the stacked fist, so I'm going to stay there for a few moments, remembering that every day is also different. So let's just do a little bit more breathing here. Hopefully by now you've found your own version. If your hips are higher in the air, that's completely fine. And in fact, if you have an extra prop around, you might place that underneath. That's another way to give your body a little bit more support. I really encourage experimentation with props to figure out the ideal versions for your body, depending on what's going on with your body on any given day. On your exhales, you might feel your front body sink and release more to the floor. Let's take one more mindful breath here. And then use your hands to help yourself up. I'm going to go back to my glasses. I'm going to stay face down. This time we're going to do a locust pose. So a locust pose is another back bend, even more gentle than we did before. And sometimes when you have a headache or migraine, it's really nice to be kind of face down on the floor. You don't want to be up and open. So I'll move the block out of the way. This one, I'm going to use the pillow for a really gentle support under the head. I take my blocks. My blocks will come on the low position, and they'll be about shoulder width apart. Now that might be really difficult to judge before you go down, so we can adjust them. Where we want the blocks is we want the top part of the block about even with the top of our shoulders. It does not have to be exact. It's going to help give our shoulders a little lift as we come forward into this pose. So you can start from hands and knees, walking your knees back, stretching your upper body forward, and then as you come down, adjust. Shift the blocks so that they support your shoulders, and your hands come behind you, palms up if that feels okay on your shoulders. And you see I ideally had my pillow right in the right place to support my forehead here. And in fact, I don't really even need to remove my glasses because there's a little bit of space there. But as I said before, if you're wearing glasses, I encourage you to remove yours. So this is sort of like our child's pose that we did, but there's less rounding of the back, more of a little back arch, and less pressure on the head because our shoulders are lifted, our head is not putting as much weight on the ground, and especially with this little pillow I have here, there's really not much pressure on the front of my head at all, but a nice little gentle pressure that may feel good for you. If you find that your lower back or your legs are bothering at all, you can adjust how far they are apart. You can tuck your toes and reach your leg a little bit out behind you more. So I'm not going to stay here quite as long, just a few more breaths. Again, you can stay here as long as you'd like. Perhaps you end your practice here if you are feeling comfortable and cozy here. In your last few breaths in this pose, feel the breath now lifting your back body. Feel those back ribs. Breathe into that space on your back. one more breath. And then take your hands to the side. Use your hands to help yourself push back up to all fours position and come up to kneeling. All right, we have 2 more postures left. For this next pose, you'll need one of your blocks and your blanket or some other kind of cushion. So this pose is going to stretch the side body. Now that might not be something that you think of in migraines, but a lot of people get backaches with migraines, and so relieving the spine in different directions might feel really good. And then we're also going to have a little side head support this time. That's another place my migraines show up, is right at the temples. Perhaps that's the case for you too. So my blanket is still doubled over from when we used it before. You can have it a little higher here, and remember, playing with the height of props is always an option. You can even have 2 blankets underneath. Just like we did in supported fish, it's going to come under our ribs, but this is going to be the side ribs. As I come down to my side, if you're mirroring me, you'll be on your right side. Move your bottom arm so that it's forward, just letting the palm come up. And then take the block and maybe at a little angle and position it somewhere that feels good and supportive of your head. Mine doesn't. All right, that feels pretty good. And you might have to play around with that a little bit to get your head at the right angle for you. Now, if that does not feel right for you, if something feels just not good, maybe the block on the lower position, even the lowest, letting your head come a little more down and allowing the stretch to come more into the side of your neck that faces the ceiling. If the neck stretch is what you're trying to do, you can also completely remove the block, letting your head come all the way down to the floor, and you can take your top hand and reach away to emphasize the length of the side of the neck here. That's another symptom that I get, is same side. If it's on the side of the temple, that's the side of my neck that also generally bothers me. And this bottom hand, instead of being out toward the front, the palm can come under your forehead or the side of your head, the temple, and that's another way to provide a little light support. If coming all the way down to the mat is just a tad too low, your palm can lift the head up a little bit, take a little bit of stretch off the side of the neck. And of course you can use your pillow as well. I think my pillow is somewhere behind me at this point. Maybe I'll show that on the second side. Here you might notice that you can feel the breath more in the side ribs. So in addition to just generally stretching the areas that might be impacted by your headache or your migraine, we also want to allow our breathing to be really free, really open in these poses. So that's another reason we're stretching our spine in different directions. Stay here about another half minute. This is a pose that is a version of a yin pose, and it does provide a little bit more of an intense stretch. So we want that feeling of stretch to be there, but we don't want it to start building and building that it becomes painful or the intensity becomes so distracting that now we're dealing with something else other than just our headache. So allow yourself to be at a comfortable level of stretch wherever that is. And then take one last breath. Use your top arm to help push yourself up. And we'll flip around to the second side. Oh, my pillow's already on this side, so I'll show you with both the block and the pillow. Take the blanket so that the blanket can be under your ribs. I didn't really say anything about the legs on the first side. That's because they don't matter. They can be stacked up. They can be more stretched out. Shove my pillow away. They can become all the way out straight, although then balance might be a little bit of an issue. So that's why I usually like to either have them stacked or staggered. Then once you find that spot under your ribs, reach your bottom arm out, and you can play around with the block to start. See if there's some position with the block under your head that finds or provides a little pressure for you. Sometimes even this little edge of the block, it seems so sharp, but I've noticed when the sharpness of a migraine pain comes, something else pressing back to it, kind of feels like you're fighting back almost, doesn't it? Of course, you can use the flat side as well on any height. And then remember, if you want to bring more of a neck stretch into it, then you probably want your head to come a little closer to the floor. And you can have that on, right on the pillow. Or if the pillow feels too low and you want just that little bump up, that's another place to bend your arm. Place it either under or above the pillow. Opposite arm can reach out and away, just resting it on your hip, on your torso, wherever it lands. Maybe reaching a little bit more with that arm, even to front or behind. We're making adjustments only as they help. Makes sense, right? We're only looking to make those changes to the pose as it helps us feel more comfortable. And remember, maybe you are looking for more of a stretch, or maybe you're looking for more of a softness and a release. They're both good. It just depends on how your own pain is manifesting on this day. And let's breathe into the side stretch for another 30 seconds or so. If that stretch on the neck starts to get too intense, you can bring the top arm back around front or tent your hand. And just one more breath here. Then push into both arms, both hands. Gently help yourself up. One more pose. So for this last pose, we're actually going to go back to the first posture, the supported fish. You can go back to doing it in exactly the same way if you found a way that was really working for you. I'm going to show you another option with just the blanket that I think is a little bit more restful, so we can also use this as our final relaxation. So I'm going to move my blocks out of the way. Remember, if you're using the block or the blanket, you'll have that under the back of the ribs and then have something else for your head if you need a prop for your head. And that could be either the blocks or your small pillow. The way I like to do this, you don't even need the pillow because the blanket is going to help you form a pillow. So you'll take your blanket in a long rectangle. There's my long rectangle. And then you'll sort of accordion style it so that it folds into thirds. Doesn't have to be exact. This long rectangle is going to go along the length of your spine. Now, I'm relatively short. I'm under 5'5", so this is plenty for me. If your blanket's not long enough, you might need the pillow after all. And I have my knees bent, seated, so that the tip of the blanket comes to the bottom tip of my spine, really just above my sacrum. You can adjust that for you. And then I'm going to start lying back on the blanket. And as I lie back, I have enough blanket that I can take this top edge, roll it under, and it provides that same kind of support underneath my neck. Now, of course, you can use a pillow if your blanket's not long enough or you need a little bit more support. So I love this version of supported fish. It gives me just enough lift to my back. I can take my hands out to the side, palms up. Palms up releases you, bringing in any sensation through your fingertips, which really are very sensitive to sensation. So you might like that if you're already getting all these pain sensations in your head. But you can also have your hands palm down, or as we did in the beginning, maybe gently resting on your torso so that you can feel your breath. And definitely, if this was my practice rather than me showing you, I would take off my glasses, place either a folded washcloth, or I like a little bit of a weight, so I have an eye bag that's just filled with beans or something like that to give this really light pressure to my eyes. That's what I like. You can try that. And then you can also keep your knees bent or stretch your leg out long and simply let your legs open up from the hip. This supports my lower back with this blanket. So you can either call this supported fish or supported Shavasana. It's how I usually do my Shavasana whenever there is a blanket available. And let's stay here for just a bit of time, allowing ourselves to release into the space. We're really not looking for any stretch here. So if you notice any of your muscles that are still holding on, sometimes it pops up in surprising places. Maybe it's a foot that's kind of flexed when it can just flop open and relax. Same thing with your hands or your wrists, just loose, or your hands trying to curl into fists. And then those other places to look for sort of underlying surprising tension, or in the jaw, you can give it a little wiggle back and forth. See if that spot between your eyebrows, you have your brows furrowed, try to let it soften. You can even take a hand there, just let yourself remind your forehead to soften your cheeks, your facial muscles. Not only does lying in this way give us some support under the back of the skull, which may be a trigger point if you have headaches or migraines that feels nice for you, but also you'll notice it tips my chin just a little bit toward my chest. And that elongating of the back of the neck with a slight tipping of the chin toward the chest actually can help our nervous system, encourage our nervous system to start moving into a relaxation response. And so some version of this pose is a nice way to end any practice. It's okay to allow your attention to wander. It's not settling on anything. Let it be free-flowing. And if it starts to settle on areas of pain in your forehead, the back of your head, wherever you might have that pain, you can gently encourage your mind to go to a neutral place in your body, a place in your body that is free from pain. So there you might want to touch the tips of your fingers together and feel that sensation. It's not going to eliminate the pain, but it actually can help your body, your brain shift to something else And you might notice that the intensity or your experience of the intensity of the pain lessens. I'm going to take about 3 more breaths with you here while encouraging you one last time to stay as long as you would like. And then if you are ready to end your practice with me, bend your knees, feet flat on the floor if they weren't already bent. Roll to one side. You might consider rolling to the side where there is the pain and allowing your hands to form a little bit of gentle pressure. That feels good for you. And you can stay in this transition as long as it feels right for you. Or you can help yourself up to seated. So I hope that somewhere in this practice, something was helpful for you. Absolutely doesn't have to be the whole practice. Just look for the pose that worked for you. I'll put some timestamps down below so you can skip right to a particular pose if you liked a certain pose. You might also try some restorative yoga. I have a whole playlist of restorative yoga practices that can be really useful for headache and migraines as well. I really am glad that you stopped by today. If you are in pain, I hope it started to fade or if it's gone, and I hope you'll come back to my channel again, maybe when you're feeling well. Have a good rest of your day.